Number 18, Texas A&M 2024 preview on Good Morning College Football. Hello and welcome to episode 68 of Good Morning College Football. I'm Nicholas Ian Allen of CFB Winning Edge and CampusToCanton.com. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you haven't already, we very much would appreciate if you would give this video a like and subscribe, of course, to the Campus to Canton YouTube channel, where there's a ton of great content popping up all throughout the week. Of course, as you can see on the new banner here, the Campus to Canton podcast feed as well on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Follow Campus to Canton on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, if you haven't already, please check us out at CampusToCanton.com, where you can join for as little as $2.99 per month. It's a great value as far as getting ready for the upcoming 2024 college football season. We are just 40 days away until week 0 kicks off. So if you are interested in college fantasy football, Debbie, the Campus to Canton version of the game, where you have a college and NFL side of the team, we've got you covered with rankings on the site, all sorts of tools, data, analysis, written content, give you strategy on how to look ahead at drafts, whether it's dynasty, supplemental, startup, everything you could want. We try to provide some information, insight, analysis, all of that good stuff. But then, of course, also, if you are interested in all of the sheets that we refer to during these previews, our CFB Winning Edge team profiles, our returning production database, our 2024 team and player stat projections, which are now available, just recently published last week. Give us a try at the C2C Winning Edge tier level or the All 22 tier level. On that note, we're going to be going through a lot of those sheets today, discussing the number 18 team in our CFB Winning Edge team strength power rankings, the Texas A&M Aggies. So with that in mind, we'll take a look at what some other people are saying about the Aggies, just to give ourselves a little bit of a baseline foundation. When we build our team strength power rankings, if this is your first time with us, and you'll get to see where some of these numbers come from, we start at the player level. Individual player ratings, overall player ratings, they are based on the upcoming college football 25 EA Sports video game. We've been doing this since 2018, so they're not exactly the very same. We've done some tweaks and adjustments over the years, but that sort of keep that in mind as we look at individual player ratings. We use recruiting information as our first ingredient, but make adjustments based on experience and career production to allow players who perhaps are a little bit underrated to improve their rating based on how well they play on the field. But then we take those individual player ratings, build them up into position and unit ratings, use those to build offensive and defensive roster strength ratings, and then our overall roster strength ratings. That is the biggest piece of the puzzle for us as far as our team strength ratings go. We also throw in a team performance rating, which has nothing to do with talent or individual player ratings, everything to do with how well that team plays on the field. So we try to give two very distinct looks at it. But then we also layer in a head coach rating, which is key for Texas A&M because new head coach, Mike Elko, new era of Aggies football. Those head coach ratings are based entirely on the team performance ratings, but they're specific to that head coach. So we will dig into those very shortly. But first and foremost, what do other folks out there have to say? What are some of the other computer-based analytics systems saying about the Aggies? What are some of the other traditional, polls and rankings for maybe preseason magazines, other media outlets? How do those groups see Texas A&M this season? And then where do we fit in the middle? Because again, we only base our rankings, our ratings on those factors that I mentioned. Has nothing to do with opinion. We try to strip opinion out as much as we possibly can and just let the numbers speak for themselves. And since we've been doing this, 6 years now, maybe more, I lose count. It has worked out fairly well for us. Feel pretty good about how our numbers have done, especially when we discuss regular season win totals, which will be how we finish the preview today as to whether or not we're going to be officially over or under the 8.5, which is where Texas A&M is currently listed at DraftKings this morning. 8.5 regular season wins, according to the odds makers in the market there. So elsewhere, there are some analytics-based systems, some very, very smart people put together projection models that have done a great job historically. And the one that is the highest on Texas A&M that I have seen is BetaRank. Has Texas A&M number 9 in its 2024 projections. A little bit lower, ESPN's SP Plus from Bill Connolly has Texas A&M number 13. Also at ESPN, the Football Power Index has Texas A&M number 14, as does EA Sports in its preseason power rankings. Phill Steele has a little bit of a gap between where his power poll, the computer-based system, views the Aggies, has it 15th, but Phill Steele in his 2020, top 25 or top 40 prediction rankings has Texas A&M down at number 28. And that's somewhat common. I mean, the computers seem to be much higher on the Aggies, think that Texas A&M is a very, very good team, top 10 team in at least one case, top 15 team, according to many. But perhaps just because of the way the SEC stacks up, difficult schedule, although we'll discuss, I think it's somewhat manageable for A&M. I think there's definitely an opportunity for the Aggies to be a very dangerous team and surprise some folks. But the numbers-based projection systems seem to be a little bit higher than the more opinion-based systems. Kelly Ford, the K Ford ratings, also on the computer side, has A&M 16th. But as we transition to, say, for example, Athlon Sports, the preseason magazine, has A&M 22nd. Stuart Mandel of The Athletic in his post-spring portal window rankings had Texas A&M 23rd. The Sporting News has the Aggies at number 25. And then two of the others that we've referenced throughout the course of this preview series, Andy Staples of On3 listed A&M among the teams that just missed his post-spring top 25, and then Mark Schleybaugh of ESPN, who has done several power rankings over the course of the offseason, started with the way too early. He's been doing that for years and years, but updates, pre-spring, post-spring, all that good stuff. The Aggies recently dropped out of Schleybaugh's top 25 power rankings at ESPN. A lot of Texas A&M's expectations. Certainly there are questions about the coaching transition. I personally am a big fan of Mike Elko. He's done an excellent job. I thought that Duke was just going to reclaim its place among maybe the worst Power 5 programs in the country once the Blue Devils really started to slip at the end of the David Cutcliffe era. Mike Elko, had a great resume as a defensive coordinator, defensive play caller, but as a first-time head coach, taking over a pretty difficult job. My expectations were quite low. Elko immediately came in, made that Duke team not just competitive week to week, but turned it into a winning program quickly and was able to maintain, finding under the radar players, developing, putting them in position to succeed. And it worked out quite well. Now he's headed, of course, back to Texas A&M, where he was a defensive coordinator not that long ago. Has a little more talent to work with, at least as we think of, raw talent, those recruiting ratings coming out of high school. A&M has certainly recruited quite well over the last few seasons. There's been some attrition, players specifically in that, number one ranked 2022 class, where quarterback Conner Weigman being a key piece of that. Many of those players have moved on, and including several former five-star recruits, but still a lot of talent remains. And Elko and his coaching staff were very aggressive, especially on the defensive side of the ball, bringing in experienced players who've been productive elsewhere, also revamped that wide receiver room quite a bit, but inherited some talent to work with and some experience, especially at quarterback, running back, and on the offensive line. But Weigman is maybe the key piece. And what some other people are saying about him as a 2025 NFL draft prospect, he is mentioned in a few of the pieces that we've referenced again throughout this preview series. In June, Bruce Feldman of The Athletic had a piece where he interviewed several anonymous coaches who gave quotes about some of those top NFL draft quarterback potential prospects. And a Power 4 defensive coordinator was quoted in the piece about Weigman saying, "Man, he is very gifted and very tough. We hit him a bunch and we affected him, but it didn't change him. From toughness to arm strength and ability to move in and out of the pocket, he's the most complete quarterback I've seen in a while. Not saying he was the best one, but I could see in a couple of more years, he will be elite. Pretty composed kid. I really thought a lot of that guy. He's scary." And as Feldman and other pieces that we'll reference mention, of course, part of the problem with Weigman is we just haven't seen enough of him. He went down with a foot injury in September, but had an 8-2 touchdown to interception ratio in 4 games throughout his career. Has 16 passing touchdowns and just 2 interceptions. He has now, with Colin Klein taking over as the offensive coordinator, is in his 3rd offense in a very short time in College Station. So a little bit of a learning curve, perhaps, but Klein is certainly a gifted play caller and offensive play designer. So excited to see what he can do under Klein's direction. Jordan Reed of ESPN also listed Weigman among the quarterbacks that he's watching ahead of the 2024 draft. He mentioned a lot of the same numbers that Feldman said, when he's on the field, performs quite well. But reading here from the piece, says, I was impressed with Weigman after studying film. He has good size, 6'3", 215 pounds, and produced when he played. 979 yards, 8 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions. But he has to stay healthy. He has a good arm, is fiery and competitive, and not afraid to test throwing windows, which he did in throwing for 336 yards against Miami. Weigman is a player to watch if he can stay on the field. Dane Brugler, also of The Athletic, touched on some similar things, also highlighted the film against Miami, which he said was a perfect example of his pocket maneuvering. And pocket maneuvering, according to Brugler, is what Conner Weigman does the best. He said the Hurricanes pressured Weigman a whopping 29 times, but sacked him just once. But we're looking for areas where he can improve. Dane Brugler says the body of work. Again, simply just hasn't played enough. The foot injury that required surgery and cut his season short last year is a bit of an issue. Brugler says, reading from the piece, there's plenty of optimism in league circles that Weigman will be a riser throughout the evaluation process. But again, with the caveat, as long as he stays healthy and on the field. Finally, David Hale of ESPN, who put all 134 FBS quarterback rooms in tiers, listed A&M and Weigman as the headliner in Tier 7, alongside Clemson, Penn State, and Duke. So, with Clemson, Cade Klubnik, who we've discussed, Penn State, Drew Allar, who we've discussed, has talent. This Tier 7 and Malik Murphy now at Duke, there's talent there, but there are questions. Haven't quite seen the best of all of these signal callers just yet, we think, based on their expectations coming out of high school, based on some of the glimpses that we've seen, the talent that they have, but we haven't quite seen all these quarterbacks put it together. And for Weigman, it's just we haven't seen enough of it due to injury. So hopefully, especially if you're a Texas A&M fan, we'll get to see a healthy Conner Weigman this season, and we'll get to see how that translates to Texas A&M's success on the field this year. So with that in mind, before we go too far into the future, let's take a quick look back. I'm going to share my screen here to show our CFB Winning Edge team profiles. If you are taking a look at our team profiles and come to the Texas A&M team page, scroll to the middle under the position and unit ratings, down into the schedule projection section. That bottom group is our 2023 recap, where Texas A&M went 7-6 last season, 4-4 in SEC play. According to the post-game win expectancy numbers, according to the second order wins, the Aggies were better than that final record would indicate. To me, that is a positive about, that is a reason for optimism looking ahead to 2024, is that, this was a team that you could say maybe was a little bit unlucky, especially in one key area, that loss to LSU, where A&M had an 81% post-game win expectancy number. If we use collegefootballdata.com's advanced box scores, which give us that number. If you were to play the same game over 100 times, 1,000 times, and the box score was exactly the same, you would have expected A&M to win it 81% of the time. So 4 out of 5 times, the Aggies would have come out on top. Just so happened, it was one of those in which they weren't quite able to get it done on the scoreboard. LSU escapes with a 42-30 victory. Somewhat rare for an 80+% post-game win expectancy number, with it being a 2-possession final score. But Texas A&M, at least statistically speaking, outplayed LSU that day. Some of the other losses, and there were obviously a handful: Alabama, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma State in the bowl game. A&M didn't deserve to win any of those games individually, but they also were not blown out. Those games were within reach, and post-game win expectancies in the 15 to 25 range instead of 1%, 2% like that Miami game. Those tend to add up a little bit as well. So combine all those, as well as some pretty dominant performances in all 7 wins. I mean, the lowest post-game win expectancy number that I see here is 96% against South Carolina. So A&M absolutely outplayed every team it beat. It outplayed, at least statistically speaking, LSU in a game it lost. And then it wasn't completely blown out in really any other game, with the possible exception, even though, again, just 2-score difference, that Miami game, that one ended up playing out like it should. The others, quite close. So once you add all those post-game win expectancy numbers, give a 1 full win for a 100%, 0.2 of a win for that week 2 loss to Miami, 0.98 against Arkansas, 0.23 against Alabama. Add them all up, the second order wins 8.5. So that A&M team last season, might have expected it to finish 8-4, or maybe 9-3 in the regular season based on those numbers. So again, a little bit better than the record would indicate. Taking a look at some of the stats that go into this and into our team performance ratings, which again, probably the second biggest factor beyond those roster strength numbers, those talent numbers. Texas A&M played like a top 15 team last season, ranked 15th overall in team performance, 44th on the offensive side of the ball, 51st passing offense, 55th rushing offense, but a top 10 defense, number 9 overall in defensive team performance. A little bit worse against the pass, number 44 nationally, but number 6 against the run. You can look individually at some of these numbers, our team performance numbers, and all of the stats that go into those. We look only at regular season numbers. We look only at games against FBS opponents. We also filter for garbage time when we can, or we use numbers that do when we can. So number 20 in scoring margin, 22nd in offensive scoring, points per game, 32nd defensively. Again, FBS opponents only, regular season only, but on margin, top 20 nationally. Yards per play, somewhat closer to the middle of the pack on the offensive side of the ball, 56th in yards per play, top 25 defensively. On net, that gets to number 35 with a +8.1 net yards per play. A little bit better in points per drive. This number comes from Brian Fremeau of bcftoys.com. Maybe my favorite individual stat, but number 21 in net points per drive, 24th on the offensive side of the ball, 30th defensively. Net yards per pass attempt, that was the big one where maybe the largest room for improvement. Passing offense, outside the top 50, passing defense closer to number 50. So certainly that'll be an area where you expect that Mike Elko and his coaching staff will be able to improve on the defensive side of the ball. And then with Weigman, hopefully fully healthy, playing a full season, should see some improvement on the offensive side of the ball there as well. But on net, 55th nationally, 79th on the defensive side of the ball. In success rate, offense, not the most efficient, 53rd in offensive success rate. Defensively, much better, number 12 nationally. So on net, 22nd. And we use an EPA, expected points added equivalent from collegefootballdata.com. They call it PPA. Top 20 nationally there for Texas A&M on margin. Number 11 in defensive expected points added per play defensively, number 47 on the offensive side of the ball. All right, so now let's take a look at the returning production numbers. So who is coming back, who is not from this Texas A&M team from last season, where Max Johnson ended up getting the a large percentage of the snaps after Weigman went down. He has transferred out to North Carolina. But you can see, again, those numbers, and we referenced them in some of the NFL draft look-ahead pieces. Weigman, 68.9 completion percentage, nearly 1,000 yards through the air, 8.2 yards per pass attempt. So that number went down with Johnson behind center. But Weigman, 8-2 touchdown to interception ratio. Jalen Henderson stepped in, was a solid backup with an opportunity when he had an opportunity to play, put up somewhat similar in that yards per pass attempt, a little bit better numbers than Weigman, but A&M certainly will be in a much better place with Weigman taking almost all of the significant snaps, I would say. As far as the rushing offense from last season goes, a lot to like among the players returning. There wasn't a every down bell cow type back. 3 running backs had roughly 100 attempts each. We'll see how that shakes out this year. We'll see if Colin Klein will lean a little heavily or more heavily on one running back, go with the hot hand, whatever. But bringing back Amari Daniels, Le'Veon Moss, and Reuben Owens, great depth there, adding EJ Smith from Stanford, even more to like as far as just being able to roll out a different running back, keep those guys fresh. All of them are talented and have been productive in different spurts. Would expect that Reuben Owens, after showing some good things as a true freshman last year, hopefully he'll be a little bit more explosive on the ground, just 3.8 yards per carry. Certainly a lot of room for improvement there. There's some who expect that he'll emerge maybe as the go-to running back. But again, a lot of depth, a lot to like based on that room and who's returning. The receiving core needed some help, and Nia Smith moved on to the NFL. The biggest loss potentially at any position, any player, was Evan Stewart transferring out to Oregon. Was limited last season due to injury, only appeared in 8 games, but a former 5-star. Some NFL folks think he might be the top wide receiver prospect, or certainly on a short list looking ahead to next year. So the Aggies will miss Evan Stewart, certainly. Nia Smith was a personal favorite of mine. Really like the different ways he could slot into different roles and make plays. Did so for a long time. But with those 2 players gone, there was a need for some extra playmakers. Fill some of that gap in experience and production with Jabre Barber, transfer from Troy. Unfortunately, Barber suffered an injury this spring that is going to limit him. But Cyrus Allen coming in as well. Tight end Trey Watson joins a pretty deep group there. Garrett Miller transferring in as well. EJ Smith, the rushing numbers last year weren't great, but as a receiver out of the backfield, he's proven that he's capable of impacting a game there. So a lot more as far as just, adding players to the mix. That seemed to be a bit of the strategy for A&M, for Elko and this coaching staff, was not that they weren't getting quality players, because there were a lot of, really talented players who transferred to Texas A&M, but just building a large, group to pull from seemed to be a real, key strategy. The tight end position, 3 incoming transfers at wide receiver, multiple guys, running back, even though you had 3 players who were kind of, starter or played a lot of snaps across the 3 of them. Just add more and more players, bring more talent, let it work itself out on the field as far as who emerges. The offensive line is pretty experienced. 3 full-time starters return. Layden Robinson graduated out of eligibility. Bryce Foster, late transfer. But A&M, again, filled every potential trouble spot with some transfers, with Armaj Reed-Adams coming in, Kolinu Fiau, and my apologies to anyone if I'm mispronouncing a name there, but bringing experience in, have plenty to work with as well as far as experience and talent goes. We'll get into the numbers on that soon. But the defensive side of the ball, that's where Elko, and immediately after he was hired, it seemed like commitment after commitment. There was a week where A&M was getting 2-3 guys a day, if not more, and a large percent of them coming in on the defensive side of the ball. So all that light blue color, those are incoming transfers. The gray color, the players who moved on, whether they were out of eligibility or just decided it was time after graduating. So Edgerrin Cooper, leading tackler, he's gone. Damani Richardson, he's moved on. A couple of outgoing transfers as well. Jacoby Matthews, Fadil Diggs, Walter Nolan, those 2 in particular. Certainly players who could be missed. Impact players, even though the stats, maybe don't jump off the screen. I mean, double-digit tackles for loss for Fadil Diggs. That's pretty big. But the players coming in think they're going to offset most of those losses, and it ends up working out decently well, especially if you compare the raw returning production numbers. And I'll zoom in just a little bit here. But you see, overall, Texas A&M ranks 45th in our adjusted returning production, which includes incoming transfers for every team. 45th on the offensive side, 37th on the offensive side of the ball, 62nd defensively adjusted. But this group here, these are the raw returning production, so only based on who's coming back, who's not from the 2023 roster. A&M would have ranked 79th overall, 41st on offense, and 111th defensively. So those incoming transfers made a big, big impact as far as offsetting the level of production of players who moved on either to the NFL or transferred out. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, who's coming back, who's not, how did last year go, what do we have to look forward to this season for Texas A&M? Top 20 team in our overall power rankings, our team strength power rankings. A lot of that has to do with top 25 talent. Number 22 in overall roster strength, 25th on the offensive side, 16th defensively. And if you look position by position, there's actually a little bit of room for those numbers to go up. On this left-hand column here, we've got 247 rating and FBS ranking that corresponds to those numbers. I usually refer to the average 247 composite rating as sort of raw talent. If you think, okay, based just on how are these guys graded coming out of high school, A&M has top 10 talent on the offensive side of the ball. They rank 7th in average offensive player 247 composite rating. They rank 9th defensively. They rank 7th across the entire roster. So there are few teams, only 6 teams grade out better based on just average 247 composite rating. The rivals ratings are very similar. A&M is 6th. The on-3 ratings also top 10 nationally, number 7. If you look at VGR, that's what we call our video game rating, our overall player rating, number 7 nationally, just an average video game rating. So Texas A&M is a very, very talented team across just about every position group, but experience and production, and some of that is turnover, getting guys out of the transfer portal who are talented, who have played before, but maybe just aren't quite up to their full potential, their full player rating, what we expect. Some of these numbers fall a little bit when you look at our position strength ratings. These are the ones that are adjusted for experience and production. So A&M at the quarterback position, Conner Weigman is a riser. I mean, several people that I expect or I respect and pay attention to as far as how they evaluate quarterbacks and NFL draft prospects. See him as somebody who could be in the mix, maybe as a first rounder, certainly in the early rounds. But as far as just the position group as a whole, 34th nationally in our numbers, 36th at the running back position where they have top 2 talent, number 30 in wide receiver. So that's actually a little bit improved based on just those raw numbers, but the tight end position falls a bit to 55th. The offensive line, top 10 overall. So that is certainly a position group with a strong foundation that you can build around. The defensive line, very similar, even though there were some key losses, as we pointed out. Diggs and Nolan, still number 7 in position strength on the defensive line. The linebacker core, a little bit inexperienced, down to number 42. The defensive backfield, the secondary, right there on the outside of the top 20 looking in. But still, lower numbers, more like a top 30 team as far as the offensive position strength goes. On defense, number 16 in those average ratings on defense, 29 on offense. I think I misspoke there. But still talent to work with. And because of that, this A&M team is going to be a tough out. They're going to be a tough team to beat week in and week out. Looking at our early projections. Our numbers are high on Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, number 6 in our overall power rankings. And we have Notre Dame favored in this game more than the market and the odds makers do right now. But Texas A&M hosts that game at Kyle Field, where EA Sports, this is release day, right, for college football 25. Number one, toughest place to play is in College Station at Kyle Field. So that is certainly a winnable game for Texas A&M. Should get by McNeese, no problem. FCS opponent there. Getting a Florida team that will be highly motivated, fighting for, Billy Napier probably fighting for his job as early as week 3 there. That is going to be a tough matchup at the Swamp, but still A&M favored in our projections there. Bowling Green, who I think could be the team to beat in the MAC. Our numbers aren't fully there, but they're certainly going to be in the MAC title race. Still shouldn't really be much of an issue for the Aggies. We have them favored by more than 3 touchdowns. But then in SEC play, it starts to get tough. There are certainly some decent draws for A&M, not having to play Alabama, not having to play Georgia, but there aren't really any just automatic wins either. Arkansas still going to be a tough matchup on a neutral field as always. Mizzou has higher expectations than we've seen in a long, long time in Columbia. That game is going to be a really difficult matchup. We do have A&M favored, but just slightly. Missouri actually, we've already previewed, indicates that they are would be favored on a neutral field against Texas A&M. But that home field advantage gives it, at least to start, a little bit of an advantage to the Aggies. Mississippi State is our second lowest rated team as far as our power rankings go, but going to Starkville is never easy. Getting LSU at home is huge. That game is almost, a true coin flip. We have LSU favored by less than 1/10 of a point. And then out South Carolina, another, winnable game. A&M certainly will be favored in that game, I expect, but on the road in a tough place to play, maybe isn't the best draw. New Mexico State, certainly a winnable game, but keep in mind they blew out Auburn last season, so won't be intimidated going into an SEC venue. Of course, much different New Mexico State team this year after Jerry Kill moved on. Auburn in the penultimate SEC game certainly will be a tough matchup. Again, on the road at Jordan-Hare. Still, A&M a slight favorite according to our numbers. And then the one everybody's waiting on is the Lone Star Showdown. The renewal of that rivalry with Texas. Finally, A&M getting to host that game against a Texas team that might be playing for an SEC championship game spot, might be, a top 10, top 5 type team in the national rankings, playing for playoff positioning. A&M is absolutely in position to ruin Texas's season, which Aggies fans, I'm sure, would love it even more if Texas A&M is able to navigate this difficult schedule. And if the Aggies win the games that we have, A&M projected as the favorite, things are going to look quite good on that final win-loss record. Just win the games that we've got them favored, they'd go 9-3. But of course, because so many of these are some pure toss-ups, some in the 52-54% range as far as our projected win percentages based on those projected point spreads, others just a little bit better in the mid-60s. Those are a lot of games that could go either way. Do I expect Texas A&M to beat Arkansas? Yes. Could Arkansas pull off an upset? Absolutely. So because of that, and because of the way the numbers shake out, these are very similar to those post-game win expectancy numbers we talked about earlier. We add all those projected win percentages up, it comes to just 7.71 wins, which is a good bit below the 8.5 regular season win total posted by DraftKings. So officially, we are going to be under that 8.5 for Texas A&M, but also, and I will say, the way we've done these win total projections, it's worked out, pretty well for us the last 3 years. We've done one of these for every team in FBS college football dating back to 2021. Over that span, we have a win percentage of 60.4%, which I feel really quite good about. We were 55.6% last season, and that was our worst year to date. If we could hit 55.6% on our point spread projections, I would be ecstatic. And we've got decent. We were 52 plus last year on projected point spreads, but overall, win totals traditionally have gone quite well. But there's always room for improvement. So I do have a little bit of a tweak this season that we are tracking. It's not going to be in our official record-keeping numbers, but we give a little bit of a bonus for every matchup in which a team is the projected favorite. We give a little bit of a penalty for every matchup in which that team is a projected underdog. Texas A&M favored in 9 gives a +6. So with a 10% win bonus, that would improve that win total projection to, 8.31, right? 8.31. So still under the 8.5, still projecting an 8-4 regular season for Texas A&M. But again, if Conner Weigman stays healthy, if that rebuilt defense plays as well as Mike Elko defenses typically do, if Texas A&M, wins the game, it's favored to win. This could be a 9-win team. It could even be, the ceiling for this Texas A&M team, I think, is even higher than that. I think, double-digit wins certainly within the realm of possibility. I know there's some other folks out there making the rounds who have sort of highlighted Texas A&M maybe as an underrated team in college football. I could see that. I could see this schedule, even though there are some very tricky matchups at Mississippi State, at South Carolina, at Auburn, are probably tougher than most expect, but they're still winnable. They're still, maybe A&M's going to have to survive those games and get out with a close, maybe even ugly win if the defense is going to have to be what this team leans on. But also the matchups at Florida, put that in that category as well. Getting Missouri at home, getting LSU at home, getting Texas at home. You get your toughest opponents. You miss Georgia, you miss Alabama. Some of those, are how you would draw it up. If you're looking for an A&M team to maybe fight its way into an SEC championship race, there's a path for the Aggies this year. A lot of it depends on Weigman. A lot of it depends on that defense coming together. Of course, staying healthy, Weigman specifically, but everybody as a whole is key for this A&M team because, we talked about the number of transfers coming in. That's to replace a lot of that depth that this team has lost a little bit over the course of the last few years. Those highly ranked recruiting classes are not there in full anymore. The depth has taken a hit. So bringing in experienced players, talented players to not only compete for starting positions, but to add depth is key. Go through a manageable schedule, take care of business in the games that you are favored to win, have a talent advantage. This A&M team could be a real, if not just a spoiler, a very, very dangerous team. I certainly think that's possible. So, all right. that is going to wrap it up for us today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for giving this video a like and subscribing to the Campus to Canton YouTube channel, the podcast feed, and to campustocanton.com. You can join for as little as $2.99 per month. Try it out. But we've got a wide range of tiers, include, if you're an annual NIL member, you get access to the CFF guide. The Campus to Canton CFF team did an excellent job. It's the best version of the guide to date, with in-depth information on all 134 teams, 200 plus player profiles, much more. Our CFP Winning Edge stat projections are part of that for the players profiled. There is defensive analysis as well, but your favorite CFF analysts like Jared Palmgren, Nate Marquise, Chris Kay, Chris Moxley, Ethan Sowers, Justice, those guys did a great job giving in-depth analysis, again, on over 200 players, all 134 FBS teams. I highly recommend the CFF guide. It's $20 if you're not an annual NIL member or higher, but well worth it if you're a college fantasy football player and your drafts are coming up. But then again, the C2C Winning Edge tier, the all 22 tier, gets you access to these team profiles. So all 134 team pages for those, with projected point spreads, roster strength, team performance, all of our different projection systems. We've got 3 primary ones that we work on. Projected point spread gives us 3 separate projected point spreads for every game all year. Totals as well, win totals and game totals. So tons of information there. And then our full stat projections are now available as well. So check us out. Please reach out to Campus to Canton or myself at CFP Winning Edge, Nicholas Ian Allen, if you have any questions. We're always happy to help. So happy Monday, everyone. If you are getting the College Football 25 video game, enjoy. We will be back on Wednesday for our next team preview on Good Morning College Football. Until then, take care.